$200,000 for one night. He said I couldn't believe it for a moment. I just stood there frozen, clutching the towel wrapped around me like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. My stepdad, Adam, was standing a few feet away from me in the hallway, his eyes locking onto mine with this disgusting mix of confidence and desperation.
He acted as if he had rehearsed this moment. My initial shock rendered me speechless, but my eventual outburst was a scream, a blend of disbelief, anger, and utter disgust. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shrieked, retreating as quickly as possible. I'm Michelle, now 33, married with 2 children, and thankfully a far cry from the 25-year-old version of myself who stood in that hallway, fresh out of college and drowning in debt from student loans. I was working as an assistant professor at a community college, trying to make a name for myself, while scraping by on barely enough to pay my bills. My dad had moved to a different country when I was a teenager, and had basically disappeared from our lives. My mom, Julia, had married Adam when I was 20, and let's just say he wasn't the kind of person I'd have ever willingly chosen to have in my life. My mom adored him, or at least she pretended to. He was 45 years old, wealthy, and provided her with everything she wanted. My mom was a bit older than him. It all started that afternoon. I was spending the weekend at my mom's house, something I rarely did, because honestly, being around her wasn't easy. My mom, Julia, and I never had a great relationship, especially after my twin sister died when we were kids. With money being so tight, I figured staying with her for a couple of days would save me the cost of groceries, and maybe we could actually have a decent conversation for once that day. I'd gone out for a jog. It was brutally hot, and by the time I got back, I was drenched in sweat. I saw a note on the kitchen counter saying that my mom was out visiting a friend, and Adam had gone grocery shopping. Perfect. I thought I had the place to myself for a little bit, so I headed straight for the shower. Not even bothering to grab clothes, since I figured no one would be back for a couple of hours after my shower. I wrapped myself in a towel and headed toward the bedroom, where I'd left my clothes. It didn't even cross my mind that someone might have come back early. I mean, why would it? But as soon as I turned the corner, there he was. Adam standing at the end of the hallway? My heart dropped. He wasn't supposed to be there, and the way he looked at me, it wasn't normal. At first I thought maybe I'd startled him, or maybe he'd startled me. But then he smiled, not a friendly stepdad kind of smile. This was something else entirely, before I could say anything. He stepped closer, too close. "You're beautiful. You know that." He said, his voice low, like he was testing the waters. I froze, not sure what to do or say. My brain was screaming at me to move, to get out of there, but my feet felt like they were stuck to the floor. Then he said it, the offer that made my stomach turn $200,000 for one night. He said like he was offering me a business deal. His tone was calm, almost casual, like this was something normal to say to your stepdaughter. That's when it hit me. He wasn't joking. He meant it every disgusting word. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mind was racing, but I couldn't form a single coherent thought. "What the hell did you just say?" I managed to choke out. My voice didn't even sound like my own. It was shaky, almost a whisper. Adam didn't flinch. He just kept looking at me with that disgusting smirk. "You heard me?" he said, shrugging, like it was no big deal. "Think about it, Michelle. 200 grand. You could pay off your loans. Start fresh. No one would have to know." That's when the anger kicked in, boiling up so fast I could feel my hands trembling. "Are you insane?" I yelled, backing away from him. "What kind of person do you think I am?" He didn't move, didn't even look embarrassed. If anything, he seemed annoyed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Calm down," he said, his voice still infuriatingly calm. "It's just an offer. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. A big deal." He was standing there trying to buy me, and he had the audacity to tell me to calm down. My whole body was shaking, and I couldn't even look at him anymore. I turned and ran straight into my room, slamming the door behind me and locking it. Once the door was locked, I pressed my back against it, trying to steady my breathing. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I felt trapped, not just in the room, but in the whole situation. What was I supposed to do? I wanted to scream, cry, throw something, but most of all, I wanted to be anywhere. But there, the worst part was knowing I had no one to call my mom. She'd never believe me. She never believed me about anything important. and this she'd probably twisted into being my fault somehow, like she always did. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, trying to figure out what to do. Minutes dragged by each one stretching out endlessly. As I sat there in silence through the thin walls, I could hear the low murmur of the TV. Adam had made himself comfortable in the living room as if nothing had happened. The audacity of it made me feel sick. Then finally the sound of the front door opening broke the tension. I heard my mom's voice light and casual, like it was just another normal evening for a moment. Relief washed over me. She was home, but almost instantly a wave of dread followed. What was I supposed to say? Would she even listen? My hands were clammy as I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. There she was, setting her purse down on the counter while Adam leaned back on the couch like he didn't have a care in the world. My stomach churned, but I swallowed hard and found my voice. "Mom, I need to talk to you alone." She turned to look at me, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone more impatient than concerned. My eyes flicked to Adam, who was watching us like this was some kind of show. I hated how calm he looked like. He already knew how this would play out. I gestured toward the kitchen, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we just talk in private?" My mom sighed, but followed me into the kitchen. I could feel my hands trembling as I leaned against the counter, trying to find the right words. "Mom," I started, my voice cracking. Adam said something to me. Something disgusting. Her face shifted, but not in the way I'd hoped. Instead of concern, there was annoyance. "What are you talking about?" she asked sharply. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was about to step off a cliff. He offered me money, $200,000, to sleep with him. The words felt like acid coming out of my mouth. I expected shock, anger, something, but what I got instead made my heart drop. Her expression hardened and she let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, for God's sake, Michelle, don't be ridiculous." I stared at her dumbfounded. "I'm not lying," I said, my voice rising. He said it not long ago in the hallway, but she wasn't listening. She was already shaking her head, her lips curling into a sneer. "You're unbelievable," she said. "I should have known you'd pull something like this. Always looking for attention, always trying to cause problems." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother dismissing me like I was some troublemaker making up lies. I felt tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. "I'm not lying," I repeated louder this time, my voice shaking. She raised a hand to stop me, her expression cold and detached enough. "Michelle, let's see what Adam has to say about this." She stormed back into the living room, and I followed, my heart pounding. Adam looked up from the couch as if we just interrupted his quiet evening. "Adam," my mom said sharply, her voice edged with anger. "Michelle just told me you said something completely inappropriate to her. She's claiming you offered her money for up." She hesitated, glancing at me with an icy glare for, "You know what?" She made a suggestive face, kind of embarrassed to say the words. Adam leaned back slightly, his expression shifting into one of exaggerated concern, like he was the one being wronged. "Julia, I don't know how to say this, but it's the opposite of what she's claiming," he said, shaking his head as if the mere suggestion was preposterous. "She came out of the bathroom in just a towel? And well, it felt like she was trying to get my attention." He glanced at me with a look of fake pity. "I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to upset you. But she's twisting the whole thing around." Now my jaw dropped. What I shouted, my voice breaking as I took a step forward. "That's not what happened, and you know it." But Adam kept his composure, holding his hands up in mock defense. "I swear, Julia, I was going to let it go, because I didn't think it was worth causing trouble. But I can't just sit here and let her make these accusations." He sounded calm, even reasonable, and that made my blood boil. I turned to my mom, desperate for her to see through his lies, but the look on her face made my stomach sink. She wasn't looking at him. She was glaring at me. My mom didn't say anything at first, but her glare said it all. She believed him. Of course she did. Unbelievable. She muttered, shaking her head. "You come into my house. This is how you act. How dare you, Michelle?" Her words hit me like a slap. I felt my face flush hot, my body trembling with frustration and anger. "You're seriously taking his side." I yelled, my voice cracking. "He's lying, Mom. He's lying to your face." But she wasn't listening. She turned to Adam and placed a hand on his shoulder, like he was the victim. "I'm so sorry you had to deal with this," she said, her tone dripping with sympathy. That was it. I couldn't take another second in that house. I turned and stormed toward the door, my hands shaking as I grabbed my bag. "You know what? Forget it," I said, my voice trembling. "Believe whatever you want, but I'm done." Without waiting for her reply, I turned and walked away. Tears welled in my eyes as I gathered my belongings and headed for the front door. The weight of betrayal and anger choked me. Just as I reached the door, her cold, sharp voice cut through the air. "I didn't expect much from you, Michelle, but I never thought you were a—" She stopped herself before finishing the word. I spun around, my hand still clutching the doorknob. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice low and trembling with rage. My eyes burned as I glared at her, every ounce of hurt and betrayal bubbling to the surface. "You want to believe him? Fine, but don't you ever call me that." She stood with her arms crossed, her face hard. For a moment, I thought she might actually say it, but she didn't. Instead, she simply turned away, dismissing me as if I were nothing. I opened the door, stepped outside, and slammed it shut behind me with all my might. Tears began to fall again, but I refused to let her see them. Not her, not Adam, not anyone in that house. I practically ran to my car, tossing my bag onto the passenger seat, and climbed in, gripping the steering wheel so tightly. My knuckles turned white. I drove aimlessly for a few minutes, the streets blurring through my tears. The anger and humiliation were too much to hold back. Finally, I pulled over to the side of the road, parked the car, and let it all out. My hands gripped the steering wheel as sobs racked my body, the weight of everything crashing down on me. After a while, I wiped my face with my sleeve, trying to steady my breathing, but the knot in my chest wouldn't go away. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, but I didn't know who to call. My mom was out of the question, and there was no way I'd go to anyone who might twist this into gossip. Then I thought of John. He was just a good friend back then, someone I trusted. I hesitated for a moment, feeling embarrassed about what had happened, but I needed to get it out of me before it consumed me. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It rang a few times before he answered his voice. Calm and familiar. "Michelle, everything okay?" he asked, immediately sensing something was off. That was all it took for the tears to start again. "John," I said, my voice cracking. I need to talk to someone. Can I just tell you what happened?" I braced myself for his reaction, not knowing if he judged me or think I was overreacting, but I didn't care. I just needed to let it out. John and I weren't anything more than friends back then, good friends, but nothing romantic. We'd met at the community college where I worked. He was one of those people who always seemed easy to talk to, the kind of guy who'd crack a joke at the right moment to lighten the mood or offer a listening ear when you needed one. Over the months, we'd grabbed coffee a few times, and I always felt comfortable around him. He never pushed, never judged, just a good, solid friend. That's why even though I felt humiliated and raw, I dialed his number. He was one of the few people I trusted to listen, without twisting things around or making me feel worse. As the phone rang, part of me worried I was dumping too much on him, but the moment he answered, I knew I'd made the right choice. His voice was calm and steady, a stark contrast to the chaos I was feeling. "Hey, Michelle," he said. "What's going on? You sound upset." John suggested we meet at a park nearby. I think he could tell from my voice that I needed to get out to talk face to face with someone who wouldn't make me feel small. I drove there, still trying to collect myself though. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. When I arrived, I spotted him sitting on a bench under one of the big oak trees, his usual easygoing expression replaced by one of quiet concern. As I approached, he stood up and gave me a small smile. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "You okay?" I shook my head, biting my lip to keep from breaking down. Again, we sat on the bench. For a moment, I just stared at the ground, trying to find the words. Finally, I took a deep breath and told him everything about Adam, his disgusting offer, and how my mom not only didn't believe me, but turned it all around on me as the words spilled out. I felt a mix of anger and relief, like I was finally letting go of a weight I'd been carrying all night. When I finished, I looked up at John, half expecting him to have the same doubtful expression my mom had given me. Instead, his face was filled with quiet anger. Not at me, but at the situation and at Michelle, he said, firmly, his voice steady. I believe you, every word. Hearing those words felt like the ground beneath me had finally steadied, even if, just for a moment, I let out a shaky breath and tears welled up again. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely audible. He shook his head, his jaw tightening. You shouldn't have to deal with this. What he did, it's disgusting. And your mom, she should have had your back. No question. His words felt like a balm on an open wound. For the first time all day, I didn't feel completely alone, and I took a deep breath trying to gather my thoughts, but everything came pouring out before I could stop it. You know, it's not just this, I said, my voice trembling, my mom. She's always been cold with me. Ever since Lily. I paused, swallowing hard. Ever since my sister died. I was 7, and we were at the playground. She chased after a ball, ran into the street, and my words trailed off as the memory hit me like a wave. The screech of tires, the screams, it all came rushing back. John didn't say anything, just nodded, letting me get it out. It was an accident. I continued, my voice cracking. But it's like my mom never saw it that way. After that day, everything changed. She stopped looking at me. The same stopped hugging me. She just shut me out. And now tonight, it's like she's blaming me all over again, like I'm the bad one. Like I did something wrong. I don't know why I even thought she'd believe me. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by how much I was unraveling. The next few days were a blur of anger, hurt, and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake Adam's smug expression, the way he twisted everything to make me look like the villain. And my mom, the way she defended him without hesitation, cut deeper than I expected. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't let him get away with it. Not when I knew the truth. I needed proof something. My mom couldn't deny something that would finally force her to see him for what he was. The idea hit me one night as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head, my phone. I could use my phone to record him. It was simple, and I always had it on me. The thought made my pulse quicken. If I could get Adam to repeat what he said, or even hint at it, I'd finally have proof something my mom couldn't brush off or twist against me. I decided the best way to catch Adam off guard was to play along to make him think I was reconsidering everything. It made my stomach turn just thinking about it, but I knew this was the only way to get him to admit the truth that evening. I called him, keeping my voice steady as if I was genuinely conflicted. Adam? I've been thinking about what happened the other day, I said, forcing a hesitant tone. Maybe we should meet somewhere quiet to talk. I feel like maybe we misunderstood each other. There was a pause on the other end, and I held my breath waiting for his response. Finally, he said, well, I'm glad you're being reasonable about it. Michelle, where do you want to meet? His voice had that same smug undertone that made my skin crawl. But I stayed calm. There's a park nearby. I suggested. It's quiet, and we won't be interrupted. He agreed without hesitation, and I hung up immediately, opening the voice recorder app on my phone. I rehearsed what I'd say, trying to keep the anger in check. This was my chance to expose him, and I wasn't going to mess it up. As soon as I saw Adam walking toward the bench where I was waiting, I discreetly started the recording app on my phone, keeping it hidden in my jacket pocket. My hands were clammy, but I reminded myself to stay calm. I had to make this believable. I stood up as he approached, forcing a small, nervous smile. Hey, Adam, I said, keeping my voice soft. Thanks for meeting me. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I wanted to apologize if I misunderstood anything. He smiled, that same irritatingly smug expression he always wore when he thought he was in control. I appreciate that, Michelle, he said, sitting down on the bench beside me. I knew you'd come around eventually. Sometimes emotions get the better of us, you know? I nodded, pretending to agree. Yeah, maybe I overreacted. I was shocked, and I probably didn't handle things the way I should have. I paused, glancing at him. I need to understand. What did you mean when you said what you said about the money? His expression shifted slightly, like he was weighing how much to say. Look, he began, leaning forward. I only brought it up because I thought we had a certain understanding. You're a smart, beautiful woman, Michelle. I thought maybe you'd see the opportunity for what it was. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady, but $200,000, that's a lot of money. Adam, why would you even offer something like that? What were you expecting from me? He chuckled, lightly shaking his head. I wasn't expecting anything, really. I was just testing the waters, seeing if maybe you'd consider it. I mean, you're struggling, right? I thought it might help us both. I felt my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral. Help us both. How? I pressed my voice, quiet but steady. He smirked, leaning back on the bench. Let's not play games, Michelle. You know exactly what I meant. I didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of it. It's not like anyone else had to know. I nodded slowly, letting the silence hang for a moment before speaking again. So you were serious about the 200,000? He shrugged casually. Of course I was. I don't say things I don't mean, Michelle. I figured you'd appreciate the gesture. Every word he said made my blood boil, but I stayed calm knowing the recorder was picking up everything. I glanced at him one last time, my voice soft but firm. Thanks for clearing that up, Adam. I needed to hear it from you. I forced myself to smile, faintly looking down at my hands as if I was embarrassed. I mean, you're not wrong, Adam, I said, hesitantly, my voice low. I am struggling. Money's been tight, and with my loans, I felt like I'm drowning most days. I glanced at him, catching the faint glimmer of excitement in his eyes as he shifted slightly closer. You don't have to feel bad about that, he said, his tone softening in a way that almost sounded comforting, but I knew better. You're a smart girl, Michelle. You've got options, and I'm offering you something that could change your life. It's not just about the money. It's about making things easier for both of us. I nodded slowly, pretending to mull it over. It's just, I don't know. I've never thought about anything like this before. I mean, it's not like you're unattractive or anything. I added, forcing a nervous laugh, as if I were embarrassed to admit it. You're actually pretty good-looking, Adam. His smile widened, and he sat up straighter, clearly encouraged. Well, thank you, he said, his voice taking on a more confident tone. See, it doesn't have to be awkward. I knew you'd understand eventually. This could be something good for both of us, Michelle. You just have to let yourself see it that way. I glanced at him again, feigning uncertainty. Maybe you're right. I just need some time to think about it, I said, standing up slowly. Can I let you know in a couple of days? I just need to wrap my head around everything. Of course, he said, smiling broadly now. Take all the time you need. I'm glad we could talk this through. I nodded, offering him a weak smile before turning and walking away. My phone still recording in my pocket. My hands were trembling, but not from nervousness anymore. I had him. Every disgusting word was captured, and I knew exactly what I was going to do next. 2 days later, I called Adam. My stomach churned as I dialed his number, but I reminded myself that this was all part of the plan. He picked up on the second ring, sounding eager like he'd been waiting for this call. Michelle, he said smoothly. I was hoping to hear from you. Have you had time to think? I hesitated for effect, then replied, Yeah, I've been thinking I'm ready to talk more about it, but I'd like to meet somewhere private, somewhere out of the way. I heard the excitement in his voice as he responded. Of course. Tell me where and when. I'd already decided on the location. A fancy hotel downtown that Adam and my mom like to brag about, at the Grand Regent. I said, let's meet in the lobby tonight. Around 8. We can figure out the details there. He didn't hesitate, agreeing immediately. Perfect, he said, I'll see you tonight. When I hung up, I sat back and took a deep breath. Everything was in place. My phone was fully charged, and I'd already set up the recorder app to start with one tap tonight. Adam would think he'd won, but this time, I wasn't walking away empty-handed. At 7:50, I called Adam, keeping my voice calm but a little rushed. Hey, I'm running a bit late. I told him traffic's a nightmare. Why don't you go ahead and wait for me in a suite? I'll meet you there as soon as I can. He didn't hesitate, clearly, eager. No problem, Michelle. I'll let the reception staff know about you. After hanging up, I drove straight to my mom's house, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When she opened the door, her face immediately twisted with suspicion. What do you want? She asked her, tone sharp. I didn't waste time. "Mom, you're coming with me," I said firmly. She started to argue, but I cut her off. My voice steady, but full of emotion. "If you don't come with me right now, I swear you'll never see me again. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. This is your one chance." Her eyes widened, and after a tense moment, she grabbed her purse and followed me to the car. When we arrived at the hotel, my heart was pounding, but I kept my composure. My mom sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her arms crossed, not saying a word. I parked the car and led her through the grand entrance of the hotel. The air smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers, the kind of luxury Adam and my mom loved to flaunt. I walked straight to the reception desk, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Hi, someone's waiting for me, but I don't know the room number. They said I should give you my name here." I told the receptionist my name. She nodded, typing quickly on her computer before picking up the phone to confirm yes. "Room 7? 04, 7th floor." I turned to my mom, holding out the card. "Let's go," I said, my voice steady. She didn't respond, but followed me into the elevator. The ride up felt like an eternity. When we reached the room, I took a deep breath before sliding the card into the door. The lock clicked, and I pushed it open. Adam was sitting in an armchair, looking far too comfortable. He looked up, expecting me to be alone, but his expression quickly changed when he saw my mom standing behind me. His smile faltered, and he shot up from the chair. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice sharper than usual, his confidence suddenly wavering. I stepped into the room, my mom trailing behind me. Adam's face was a mix of confusion and panic as he glanced between us. "What's going on, Michelle?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice steady, but the cracks were already showing. I pulled out my phone, holding it tightly in my hand. "I thought it was time. We cleared up that little misunderstanding, Adam," I said, my voice cold. "You remember, don't you? The conversation we had at the park 2 days ago." His eyes darted to my mom, then back to me. "Michelle, I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly, his usual smugness replaced by a nervous edge. "I think you're making a big mistake here." I smiled faintly, my hand trembling slightly as I tapped the play button on my phone. His voice filled the room, crystal clear. Every disgusting word he'd said at the park played back his offers, his excuses, and worst of all, his casual admission that he meant every word. My mom's face paled. As the recording continued, she froze her eyes wide as she stared at Adam. When the recording finished, I turned to my mom, my voice steady but full of emotion. "That's the man you defended, the one you chose to believe over me. Now tell me, Mom, am I still the liar here?" Adam started stammering, his face red with panic. "Julia, this is all being twisted. She set me up," he blurted, his voice rising in desperation. "You can't believe this. She's just trying to turn you against me." But my mom didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on me, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't find the words. Finally, she whispered, "Is this real, Michelle?" Her voice, barely a whisper, betrayed a deep crack. On the drive home, my mom and I shared a silence that felt different. For the first time, I sensed she truly saw me. A week later, she filed for divorce, and Adam was gone from our lives forever. Neither of us ever saw him again. In the weeks that followed, my mom and I began to truly communicate, slowly mending our fractured relationship. She offered a genuine apology for her disbelief and years of mistreatment. It wasn't an instant solution, but it was a crucial first step. For the first time, I felt like more than just the ghost of the daughter she'd lost. I was her daughter too, and she wanted me in her life. Looking back, that night was a turning point. It compelled me to advocate for myself in a way I never had before. It was difficult, painful, and chaotic, but it ultimately restored my voice and my life. My mom now treats me with respect. And while our relationship will never be perfect, we found a way to move forward. As for me, the ordeal brought John and me closer. He was my unwavering support through it all, checking in, offering encouragement, and never once doubting me. What began as a friendship gradually deepened into something more profound. By the time I turned 30, we were married, and now with Bobby and Emma, I have the family. I always dreamed of a family built on trust and love, something I once thought I'd never have.